From The Times and The Sunday Times, this is The Story. I'm Luke Jones. A week on, fires are still raging in western Los Angeles.
Got some clothes, threw them in the bag again and went out the door, got in the car and joined the thousands of people heading south.
As anxious Angelinos wait to return home, or wait to see if their home will be spared as the fires continue, fingers are already being pointed.
It was really the beginning of last week that the blame game began. I think people were incredibly anxious and looking to their political leadership for reassurance.
The story today: escaping the Los Angeles inferno.
Very dangerous situation unfolding in Southern California right now as we are taking a look at the smoke from the Palisades fire that has erupted and has grown pretty quickly there just outside of LA.
It's Tuesday last week, the 7th of January. At 10:30 a.m, a fire starts in the Pacific Palisades, a neighborhood out in the west of the sprawl of Los Angeles.
If you're in that evacuation area, because evacuation warnings have been issued for some of these places, you want to take heed to that.
What was 20 acres of fire grew in just 20 minutes to 200 acres. By mid-afternoon, it was 700. By nightfall, almost 3,000.
I went to go get up to go to the bathroom or something, and I looked outside and I just saw smoke and some orange and red flames. And I screamed, "Fire, fire, we have to go."
The ground was dry, and the sky was very windy, encouraging flames and grounding the water-dropping helicopters trying to slow them.
Sometimes, these things pop up and they spread so fast. Emergency responders and government officials can't get the warnings out. Were you guys warned about this? Did you know this was coming?
No, I literally just looked out the window. I had just on my normal Tuesday morning, and there were just flames everywhere.
There are well over a dozen homes that I have just counted and that are just completely flattened here. The smoke is so thick. The winds have not died down. We're praying for mercy here.
Where I live is on fire right now. Literally the entire city of the Pacific Palisades is burning. And I flew here last night. I was on the plane, started getting texts, and it's gnarly, you guys.
If this disaster wasn't enough in the west, that night in Eaton, in the northwest, another fire began, engulfing 400 acres in 2 hours. And this was just Tuesday.
I'm going to check back in with our Joy Benedict, who's following the Eaton fire in Altadena. Joy, what are you seeing now?
I see a lot of devastation, and unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason. So you see, we have a couple of homes burning there, and then right next to it, to the right, 2 homes that have not caught fire yet.
By Wednesday, with tens of thousands of people already out of their homes, even more were evacuated from the hills above West Hollywood, and a total of 1.5 million people were without electricity. By Thursday, this was, in the eyes and processes of the federal government, an official major disaster.
Emergency proclamation's being drafted as we speak, and I just want to thank the president because that's something I don't take for granted and something we should not take for granted at this moment in American history.
In the Pacific Palisades, where 5,300 structures were destroyed, arson investigators and returning residents were able to fall in behind the fire's wake and pick through the ash.
It's so hard to believe that what you left in one piece is now just rubble. And so we're just trying to see, maybe there's a stone, maybe there's a little gem of a piece, maybe one of my forks and my silverware. Yes. I don't know. Anything is going to just kind of be a touchstone.
At this point, mixed in with the desperation, was politics. Some residents were angry about the response and whether government mismanagement of the water had helped hinder the firefighting.
That's the governor. That's the governor. Governor, I live here, governor. That was my daughter's school, governor.
Midway through an interview with Sky News, one Palisades resident spotted Gavin Newsom.
Please tell me what you're going to do. I'm not going to hurt him, I promise.
I'm literally talking to the president right now to specifically answer the question of what we can do for you and your daughter.
The incoming president, Donald Trump, was clear on who he blamed.
He is responding to all this by placing blame on the California governor, Gavin Newsom, for not signing a water restoration declaration.
The president-elect said Gavin Newsom, new nickname, had previously refused water from Northern California being diverted south to protect an essentially worthless fish called a smelt, he said.
He says he will demand that this incompetent governor, and these are the words of President-elect Donald Trump, allow beautiful, clean, fresh water to flow into California. He is to blame for this, close quote.
That wasn't quite the reason or the cause of the problem, although the governor did later launch an inquiry into why some fire hydrants had run dry. The fire chief, too, had a pop at the LA mayor.
Let me be clear. The $17 million budget cut and the elimination of our civilian positions like our mechanics did and has and will continue to severely impact our ability to repair our apparatus. I have also requested multiple budgets, interim budgets, to show how understaffed, under-resourced, and underfunded the LAFD is.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the ABC 10 News at 5.
By Friday, 6 fires were still burning. The Eaton fire was 14,000 acres in size, and the Palisades one was 21,000. Only 11% contained as well.
The Palisades and Eaton fires are now in the top 20 most destructive wildfires in California history.
So it was still very much on the move. Imagine the Pacific coastline of western Los Angeles, with Malibu to the left and Santa Monica further down to the right. The spread of the Palisades fire had affected most of that gap between the two, and had started moving northwards as well, threatening Brentwood.
We went down to Van Nuys for a quick refuel, came back, and the progress in the last, 20 minutes or so is nothing less than jaw-dropping. Mother Nature, she has been unpredictable. This has been a dynamic fire.
This marched on into the weekend, getting close to the homes of the likes of Kamala Harris, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Meryl Streep, and the Getty Museum, home to priceless art and artifacts from the Neolithic to the postmodern.
Firefighters are in a race against time, trying to take advantage of better weather conditions to get the fires under control before the winds spike again.
This week is a fork in the road, one fire chief said. The fires are slowly being tamed, but could take off again on Tuesday or Wednesday because of the high winds forecast. We got in touch with someone who saw some of this too close for comfort and fled to the other side of California.
Could you please introduce yourself?
My name's Jamie Hartman. I'm an English songwriter. We live in Brentwood area. We're currently evacuated and we're in Palm Springs this morning.
An Englishman in LA for 15 years now. He spoke to our producer, Edith.
When did you first hear about the fires in LA?
Well, my wife called me, actually. She was driving along Sunset from our house and started seeing the smoke from up in the Palisades, and a lot of our friends at least have places up there, and it was sort of just spreading. Then the news spreads very fast when it's bad, you know. Of course, we've heard of loads of different wildfires at different times and been there for a few of them. But the ferocity and the speed of this was pretty crazy. It happened on, as you know, it's kind of a perfect storm. The amount of wind the speed of the wind that was going on, it was just so fast.
So on Tuesday, when you heard about it first, when your wife told you about it, what could you see? How was it?
Well, we live on the west side of LA, obviously.
Yeah.
And the main fire was up in the Palisades on the hills. And my wife is very good like this. She sort of said, look, go and get the kids anyway for the air quality because it's going to be terrible. And from the school, you know, up on the hillside, you could see what everybody else was watching on the TV. You could see these huge columns of smoke drifting down across sort of Santa Monica and down towards the Long Beach. It was pretty extraordinary.
So from that moment on Tuesday, did you just decide to evacuate, or did you wait for an official order? Can you just walk us through from Tuesday what happened basically?
Because most people are glued to their phones all the time anyway, in life, people find apps very quickly to help spread information or to gather information. So we were on something called Watch Duty, which has been very helpful across this. And lots of texts started flying around on WhatsApp groups and things to share information. But we didn't evacuate straight away, no. Initially, friends of ours from the Palisades, because that's the next town over from us, we live in Brentwood, they told us that they were being evacuated straight away, and we told them to come to us. So basically by the afternoon, we had one displaced Brentwood family staying with us. And unfortunately, by the time the evening came, we decided as a group, including that family, to move further inland and stay with other friends who could accommodate all of us, which was very generous, and just put us up further in town into a sort of a safer zone, which is where we've been until we came back to our home, thinking things had moved and calmed down, but now they're back to being very scary. And the fire has got so much to feed on up on the mountains, so much greenery. It's so lush in LA. It hasn't been this lush in LA since I've been living here. So, a couple of years of amazing rain in the winters has caused so much vegetation to regrow, and then 8 months of drought, so it's got just too much to feed on, which is making it harder, and the winds have picked up again. So it still remains really scary. You think, please God, we may be out of the woods, and then you get to the next point and it's scary again.
So when we're talking, it's Saturday, the 11th of January. It's the morning for you. What's happened to your house and to your neighbor's house? How is it at the moment?
We're just honestly watching and waiting nervously. You think you're okay, so we went back to our house yesterday morning to rescue some things and get out of there, and the air is full of smoke anyway, and little bit particles in the air. We went back, changed our clothes, got some things, and then came and left the area like so many other people. I'm staying in a hotel in Palm Springs, and I just stopped, came out of my room to come and do this, and the two guys in the hallway from separate rooms were both like, "Are you from LA too? Are you from LA?" Yeah, I literally then my neighbours.
Can you quickly take us back to yesterday? So yesterday was Friday. You drove from LA to Palm Springs. How was it from when you went back to your place, got a couple of stuff, and then drove to Palm Springs? Can you just take us back?
Yes, basically we decided yesterday morning time to get out of town while the air quality was not good, because overall, unfortunately, the longest term effect of all of this is breathing in terrible air for a week. It's like smoking 25 cigarettes a day at the moment, just standing in LA, just being on the ground in LA at the moment. So we decided to leave. We were living out of suitcases anyway, and we have 2.5 suitcases. I've got my kids, I've got my dogs, who are looking at us like wondering where the hell they're going to end up next. We got in the car, we went back to our house. The whole inside of the house smells of ash and smoke. Even though the windows have been closed, the doors have been closed, it pervades everything. Got in the car and joined the thousands of people heading south away from the fires. And the air above you is not blue. It's a kind of a hazy beige, sometimes red, depends on how thick the smoke is, until you get probably, I would say, 60 miles out of town. That there's a weird feeling when you're going through this and your home is at risk, that even being away from it, it sort of increases the anxiety of what's happening. Being there, at least you're based at your home and can sort of, in a way, be present to feel like you can react. And this is one of those things. I lived through 2001 up in New York City. I was in New York at that time, and when the bombs happened in London much earlier in my life. So I've been in areas where you get this sense of fear, and living in an area where you feel things are happening around you way beyond anyone's control, not just your control, but other people's control. And you just, you're in fight or flight mode. So you've got that feeling all the time. You don't want to relax because you feel like you might get punished for doing so. So you're sort of constantly in this state of alert.
Are you thinking about, at this moment, about going back to your place? Are you putting together any sort of plan? How are you thinking about the next couple of days?
I'm trying not to make too much of a plan. I think making one decision at a time is probably the only thing we can do at this point sensibly. We're just watching and waiting along with the rest of the world, and just hoping that, please God, our home is safe and that our friends' homes are safe. I wish I could. I wish we had any more control of it than that. We're just reacting to it, honestly, hour by hour at the moment. And while I have at least this platform to say it, I just sending love to all of, not just my friends, but the entire community over here that's impacted. Whatever you're going through, if you're not going through it personally, then help other people who are, is all I would say. Love is the only way to help at this point. No judgment and no, politicizing it's not going to help. Just help each other out if you can.
Jamie Hartman in Los Angeles, where, as things stand, many fires are still burning. Homes are still being damaged and destroyed. But already the political blame game has begun. Incoming President Trump has got stuck in. Los Angeles is still suffering fires, and winds are forecast to pick up and potentially make the situation worse later this week. But the blame game is already very fiercely being fought. No one is suggesting any politician lit the fires themselves, but fingers are being pointed at some, accused of, well, maybe not allowing the city to be as ready as it could have been. Megan Agnew is a senior writer for the Sunday Times in the US. She's just back from Los Angeles.
It was really the beginning of last week that the blame game began. I think as soon as the fires began, people were incredibly anxious and looking to their political leadership and the other sources of stability in the city for reassurance and for guidance about what on earth might happen, what to do, where to go.
Because as you were wandering around as a Sunday Times journalist asking people, did you get a lot of political anger, directed at you as you were asking questions?
The anger at that point was mainly directed towards their area and their city because people didn't know whether their houses were still standing. And they couldn't get past the cordon, and they were having to sneak past and jump fences, and then they found nothing. So at that point, midweek to the end of the week, people were just incredibly concerned. And also they had no clue. Can you imagine having no idea what is left of your house? And then sort of Friday evening, Saturday morning was when we really noticed, when we were talking to people, a tip more into anger, yes.
So the first argument surrounds the LA mayor. The fire chief, who is a public servant, was out on the TV shows, throwing shade, as the Californian cool kids would say, directly at her, blaming, budget cuts, the lack of resources they had. That seems quite extraordinary.
So this comes after a year of negotiations between the union and the city, when the union were asking for more pay for over hours. That was a negotiation that went on for a long time. So when this year's budget was announced, the newly negotiated pay of the firefighters was not included in the budget. So the budget was $23 million below what it was last year. People have been really honing in on that figure. What's latterly been corrected is that the amount of money that they're now paying the firefighters brings them $53 million above last year's budget. But the thing is that does also mean that the budget has been reallocated. And so it's a really, really knotty argument. And people feel very differently from both sides. The fire department obviously do feel under-resourced. They feel like the reallocation and the cuts that happened this year has meant that they don't have the same number of mechanics, they don't have the same amount of equipment, and that they are struggling in the face of these fires. And that's really where a lot of this debate and tension has arisen from.
And some of it has accumulated around Karen Bass, the LA mayor, I guess, because obviously has a role in the allocation of that budget, but also wasn't she abroad when the fires started? How big a crime is that politically?
She was in Ghana at the inauguration of the new president, and she said that she was receiving live updates about what was happening with the fires and the forecast. One of the first questions I asked when I arrived in LA of various people, including an aerial firefighter, people on the ground, police, etc., was how predictable were these? How prepared was the fire department? And they said the forecasts for these winds were terrifying. You know, in the week before these fires started, this was a seriously high risk. I mean, you can't say you can predict it, but they were certainly prepared for this happening. And as soon as I heard that again and again and again, it did make the crime of Karen Bass not being in the country seem more acute.
And also some people pointing out that she did say when she got to the job that she wasn't going to go abroad.
Right, she said, I live in this city, I live in this state, I promise not to go abroad. And it's been reported over the last few days. And you can look at her travel schedule that she has indeed.
So from Bass to Smelt then, Donald Trump, the president-elect, came out swinging for the California governor, Gavin Newsom, a very prominent Democrat, blaming him and saying the problem was because he wanted to protect an endangered fish, smelt, in Northern California, and that is the reason why there isn't water and fire hydrants down in the south where some of this is happening. What is happening there, and how true is what he said on Truth Social?
So again, this is a really knotty issue. So Trump said that Newsom refused to sign a declaration that would essentially carry more water from Northern California down into the sort of more agricultural flatlands. What happened was that Trump's administration successfully passed a law which would mean that this water could be redirected to Southern California. But Newsom's office, his governor's office, launched a successful legal bid, essentially sued the administration on environmental grounds, which was to protect wildlife, including fish. So that's where the line about the smelt in Trump's Truth Social post came from. This is in 2019. And that is what Trump is referring to. Gavin Newsom said the declaration did not exist. So, I mean, that's murky. The argument from then is also murky, because what Trump is saying is that the reason this water wasn't in Southern California is the reasons that the fires spread, which is not true. There has not been a moment in fighting these fires where water has run out. The water supply is pretty consistent and pretty reliable. That's fine. The issue actually has been water pressure. So when thousands of firefighters all at once were drawing from the water system on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, the ability of the system to push the water, particularly uphill to the Palisades, was completely depleted. So these firefighters were going to fire hydrants and water wasn't coming out, or it was coming out at not a higher rate as it needs to. And so that has sparked this other debate. Newsom said that he's going to launch an independent investigation into it. I was speaking to someone who works for the fire department, and they were saying it's almost impossible to prepare for an event and a fire on this magnitude. I mean, they just said it's really difficult to have the infrastructure that enables water to be pumped all at once at that speed.
Do you think this will have any effect going forward? The damage maybe to Gavin Newsom, he said he's going to launch an independent inquiry into why some of these fire hydrants weren't pumping out water, as you say, for pressure reasons. Donald Trump is clearly making hay with all of this, connecting it to Gavin Newsom's attempt to stop this redirection of water on environmental fish grounds. Will any of this stick in a few weeks' time when Trump is actually president, do you think?
Of course. I mean, Newsom and Trump have been face-to-face for many years, and particularly more recently. They are really, really keen on going up against each other. They're major adversaries politically. So of course this is going to continue. They almost enjoy going at each other, I think, at some moments. And what LA is left with is like decimation. This is really the beginning of rebuilding, which requires enormous amounts of money. And this is also the beginning of desperately trying to understand whose responsibility it is to rebuild what.
Megan Agnew, senior US writer for The Sunday Times. And of course, this is a very active and developing story. If you're a subscriber at thetimes.com and also Times Radio for free, will be a very good companion for you to get the latest. That is it from us. The producer today was Edith Rousselot. The executive producer is Fiona Leach. And sound design and theme composition was by Palisades. I'm Luke Jones. See you soon.